build-up potion, and he just pasted it directly into his manuscript.
That.
Wait, are you the last person in here?
Yes.
Hooty hoo!
Wow. Well, that was
a noise.
It was powerful.
It was not.
With gusto.
The gusto. The grit. The challenge. I don't know.
Yeah, John Boyne is... I don't know. I've never read him.
I read Boy in the
you
Striped
know.
Pajamas when I was like 16, 17, somewhere in there, but...
I saw the movie, and here's my thing. I was actually just explaining this to a patron today. I was like, my thing about... I will read anything that has a tragic bent to it, because I love that, but be straight up with me about it. Like, don't use it as a plot device to be like, and look, I'm actually telling you a story about the Holocaust. You should have picked up on these signs in this 200-page... Look, sir, just tell me straight up. Start with the Holocaust boy and the kid, and be real about it. Like, don't lead me into the garden path.
He was trying to say that all Germans couldn't possibly have known about the Holocaust, even boys who lived on the edge of the property.
He was trying.
Was it not
Are we
Bush
talking
essay?
Boy in the Striped Pajamas?
Yes.
Holocaust?
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, years afterwards. Like, I literally went into that movie entirely blind, and by the end of it, I had finally put enough pieces together that I was going, wait a minute. But it was not evident. It
Really?
should have been, but it was not really evident.
The text of the book was
we really
functionally
we
well.
literally watched it in my history class when we talked about World War II.
I watched it in my class as well, and then my mom watched it on TV, and then she got really angry.
I could see in class, because you're in a class, like, why else would you be watching it? You know that it's a World War II thing because you're in class. But, like, to watch it out of the blue because your cousin's like, you need to check out this movie. I'm like, okay, cool. It has all the things. What the?
At what point did you realize?
Here's the thing. This is why Schindler's List works, and Boy in the Striped Pajamas does not.
You're selling me to watch it.
Schindler's List is straight
I've never watched
up.
it
Like, it's
before.
just like, you want to know what this was like?
Wait, you've never seen it?
Boom.
I've never read it, never seen...
You're not missing anything.
The movie
No,
is
really not.
eh.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, isn't Daniel Thewlis in it, though?
I don't know and I don't care.
Daniel Thewlis isn't it, but David Thewlis, actually. Let's get that
Thank
correct.
you.
But
So now you're gonna look up
so,
the
I mean, it's cheap. It's a cheap thrill, and to treat the Holocaust like a cheap thrill infuriates me. Because I've seen that slave movie that does that same thing, which is
12
why I
Years a Slave.
refuse to watch Django Unchained. I'm like, no.
It's David-
I'm
yeah, it's
sorry.
Remus.
No. You
I
don't
just
get
watched
to
it
do
'cause
that
it's
to
a Butterfield.
something that generations of people experienced. And are still experiencing.
Okay, reining it in a little bit.
Back out.
Us reining it in?
Only just
No.
5 o'clock.
Good afternoon, dear... Yes, but some of us are on a clock.
Good morning,
Some of us
good
are.
afternoon,
Yeah.
good night.
Good afternoon, dear listeners. Of course, depending on what time you download and listen to our podcast, could be good
Good
morning
afternoon, good morning,
Greetings.
good night, hello.
and good luck.
And good day. No.
Good day, sir.
I just totally believe. Yeah. Is that a middle grade novel?
Wait, what is it?
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, cuspy. I'd
Yeah.
say more
Cuspy?
like elementary age.
That's a middle grade novel.
But like you could read it in middle school. I'm not Stephanie.
Well,
Yeah.
that's one of my
Oh, see,
questions
okay,
for
we'll
later.
get there.
We'll get there.
We'll
I
save
have
that.
that question for later.
We got routine.
Question
We got
for later.
routine. You should probably that's early hint has been given to what the topic of the podcast is today. However, let's go around and around and around. What are we all reading, watching, playing, dreaming about? I don't know. What are we reading?
Do you want to know what we're all dreaming about?
Yes.
What are you dreaming about, Grant?
I don't know. I haven't had a dream in a few days.
Well, what are you reading, Grant?
What am I reading?
Yes.
I am reading Universal Harvester by
Oh, John Darnielle.
John Darnielle. Yes.
Oh, cool.
I just started it last night, so I don't really have a full picture of what's going on, but
Yeah.
it's already kind of creepy, kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's about a guy who works at a video store in like the late 1990s, just as DVDs are about to wipe out that whole,
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And then
Rip Blockbuster.
Yeah.
and then
We
people
spelled their doom.
people start returning VHS tapes with things that aren't supposed to be on the VHS tapes. They're not.
But it's not porn?
It's not pornography.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, 'cause that was...
different
How
book.
dare you? This is a wholesome podcast.
It's just a word that has a definition that
I
you can
know.
look up in the dictionary. I'm sorry.
I'm joking.
But you tried not to say murder snatch the other week.
One is
Murder snatch.
That's why.
Anarchy.
She wrote. It's terrible. Cool. So you like it so far? I mean, yeah. Cool vibes.
Yeah. Also, a tribute, because I learned that Dave Wolverton died, and he's an author.
When?
Like a month ago.
No.
Yeah.
Did you not know?
Lies.
I didn't learn until like last week.
No one told me
I
about
literally
this.
got the CNN push notification when it happened.
Oh, seriously?
I
Yes.
loathe you. A CNN push. Okay. Aaron, what are you? Yeah. Wow. Speaking of, Aaron, what are you reading? My heart hurts. I'm what? How could? Yeah, right. What the heck?
Okay, so reading wise, I'm reading. I gotta get the title real quick. Hold on. Is called A Taste for Poison: 11 Deadly Molecules and the Killers Who Used Them. Essentially, the book is about what it says on the tin. It's exactly what you think it's about. It's about people who use poison and how they use it and all the different ways. So like shady scientists, medical professionals, spurned lovers, etc. And it's because I'm reading it because I signed up for a webinar in a couple weeks, like a free one to do in my off time, about the use of arsenic in Victorian books. In the actual like book covers.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, this is a really cool, interesting like connection that I found there.
Yeah.
Game wise, I've decided to re-pick up is the key word here. It's the game called The Last Remnant. It's from 2008-ish. It's done by the people who do Final Fantasy, so it's Square Enix. So, top tier like storytelling going on here. Essentially, there's a bunch of remnants or mysterious ancient artifacts that are tied to a person, and only one person can like use their power specifically, and your main character is trying to find his sister who has been kidnapped. Because their parents are like some scientists or like some really high up people in a whole other system. And he lands himself in the middle of a battlefield where somebody is using one of these remnants.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to find his sister, and he gets like literally like picked up and teleported via like Final Fantasy style magic, because that's the type of game it is, to this random location, and he finds himself in the middle of it. They get him out of the battlefield, and he ends up trying to enlist their help. And by enlisting their help, he accidentally gets them all tied up in a war with the people who have kidnapped his sister, because they're like the evil villains of the whole entire thing. The ending of it is quite tragic because you get really attached to the characters and stuff happens to them. And,
Naturally.
Whew, it has definitely got that Square Enix Final Fantasy tragedy thing going on in the middle of it. And what really sucks is you can't exactly buy it anymore because they've taken it off like the stores. So I own it still.
So yeah.
So I can still play it, but if you like go to buy it right now, good luck, Charlie.
Is there a
Jen-
reason for? Oh, sorry.
No, I don't specifically know. There were rumors of a remaster at some point, but like nobody actually knows.
They ran out of money.
They would have gotten more money.
Wow.
But anyways, Jen, what are you reading? What are you doing
I am rereading.
besides suffering?
Yeah, because of the state of my life currently, I am rereading The Anthropocene Reviewed by John Green.
Oh my goodness.
Is that a book that gives your heart a hug, or is it?
No.
I don't
for me.
think that's. Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I like
That's fair.
John's way of talking and his way
Yeah.
of viewing the world.
He does have a very.
It is comforting. In the 10 minutes a day I have to myself between tech week rehearsals, my brain is made out of bees.
Oh.
Or penguins?
Wow.
No.
Jen Noble starring in Mr. Popper's Penguins.
Which will already be over by the time this episode
You all
airs.
missed
That's
it.
right.
That's
Too late.
How dare you?
You snooze, you lose.
Oh well.
Should have promoted it last week.
And in read dreams, I don't have those. So Andy, I just pass out and wake up again.
That should be a t-shirt.
That's exactly what
Or
I
a
do
Lin-Manuel
too.
Miranda song. I don't know.
That. Never mind. I am starting, probably within the next hour and a half, How to Be Perfect by Michael Schur, the creator of The Good Place. Narrated by, of course, Michael Schur, Kristen Bell, Darcy Carden, Ted Danson, William Jackson Harper, Manny How do you
Jacinto.
say it? Jacinto, thank you. I couldn't remember how to say his last name. Mark Evan Jackson, Jamil, Todd May. I am in the mood for something that's going to give my heart a hug.
Oh.
Like a literary form of chocolate milk, and I hope it does not fail me.
Just remember to read something that's going to make you throw it out the window later.
Oh, yes, we will.
Yes.
Well,
I'm foreshadowing.
The book thief was that, but we'll get into that
I'm
later.
foreshadowing.
And Andy, I believe the technical term is chalky milk.
Chalky milk connoisseur, thank you.
I hate all of you.
Chalky milk today.
Seceding it.
And, I'm not really playing anything, and I'm dreaming, I don't know, crazy dreams, but,
Really doing the dream thing?
That's what?
You know what? I did have a tornado dream.
A tornado
I have a
dream.
lot of tornado dreams, like traveling cross-country tornadoes, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
This-
Okay.
Anyways,
Did they
Is
ever
this-
involve Lord Eggington?
Lord Eggington is dead. I heard him crack.
Tony, this got real bleak. What are you reading?
Well, we're about to talk about middle grade, so it's gonna get real bleak. I just finished an incredible middle grade book called A Soft Place to Land by Janae Marks. Beautiful, fantastic, wonderful book. And I just started, by which I mean I only read like half of the first chapter, because for some reason there are long chapters in this, whatever. But it's called The Only Black Girls in Town by Brandy Colbert, and it, so far, is really, really well written, so we'll see how it develops, because it could be a fun one, I think.
All right.
Yay.
No dreams?
No? Not
shucks.
particularly.
What even are dreams? How do they work?
I had a horrible.
How do they exist?
I did have a horrible dream a month ago that set me in a tailspin for a 24-hour period, and it was a dream in which Chelsea and Jen both fired.
We should do a psychic dream episode in the future.
Yes, how about we do?
However, what is your...
We're booked all the way
You
to
asked me about
2023.
my dream, and I was telling you, and now you're cutting me off.
Listen,
What
we
the
can't
heck?
we can't do a dream podcast until 2023. We're already all booked. Sorry.
That's fair.
We got a couple in June.
Okay.
We're all booked.
Weird.
We can't do it until
Subject matter.
2023. Let's do some middle grade.
Actually, we're doing
Let's
pretty good for that
go.
round around.
Can we dial it back?
Yes. Click, 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 click. Middle grade
Get out.
fiction.
Yeah.
What is it?
Oh, I hate that question already.
What isn't
It's
it?
very loaded.
My loaded question was actually going to be where, up in YSD, we're going to fix ourselves to YSD. Where exactly would you place middle grade? Is it only tween? Is it only?
Oh
is it
my
J?
God. Okay. So.
I'm here to make everyone suffer.
If you need to stand on a soapbox, we can clear the table.
Yeah, like you need to clear the table for me to stand on a soapbox. Here's the
They
thing
can
about
just stand on the chair.
middle grade. Yeah, I could. Don't tempt me. Here's the thing about middle grade that is fascinating as a category, because it's really an age category, is that it's much larger than people assume, and it also is very, very much not YA. There are so many people in the public perception who are like, oh my God, that YA book Charlotte's Web just really sent me like,
Yeah.
no. Like, Charlotte's Web is barely a middle grade book.
Like weirdly, and we have not discussed this at all, because I feel like that discussion always leans to like, what is the dividing line between MG and YA?
Yeah.
And I feel like
Right.
that ground is getting tread, but what is the dividing ground between like a J, as we would refer to it upstairs, and an MG?
I think there's
That's
a there's a
essentially the
lot
question.
of blending. Like, okay, so for example, you look at a book like The One and Only Ivan, right? Mm-hmm. It's definitely solidly a middle grade book that elementary school readers devour. Because it really is written for elementary school readers. Or The Tale of Despero is another one. That's definitely like, it's an elementary school read. Middle grade begins in elementary school. Because when you're that age, you tend to read up.
Yes.
Even if it's only like a year or two, or what they call levels, don't get me started, you read a couple of years up. So
Yeah.
like,
so if you are a fifth grader, you're starting to read about middle schoolers.
yeah. So middle grade fiction has a couple of like what they call like lower middle grade, which is like your fourth and fifth grade readers, and then you have upper middle grade, and those are just all of your middle school readers. And honestly, by the time you're in seventh grade, you're either reading comfortably about middle schoolers because you haven't figured middle school out yet, because what is middle school? Or you're like venturing into your first sort of YA books, but in the current market, that's hard to do in 7th grade.
Yeah, there's a very real lack of like the sort of lower YA, to use the terminology you were just putting into place.
Yeah.
Especially because I feel like anymore with YA, we've got the Percy Jacksons and Rick's entire imprint basically based around the same concept now.
Yeah.
Where if you're like an adventure MG reader, you're set until you're like 17.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to pull focus, but aren't there also, from middle grade, but aren't there also like the divided kind of like levels of YA too?
Not anymore.
Not
really.
It used to be.
Like, there did used to be, again, a sort of, like, the younger YA or the lower YA, whatever terminology you want to use it for.
Yeah.
Like, Allie Carter, who I still really love, easily defines
Jenny
her books that
Han's
way.
first trilogy, I think, was
Jenny
like,
Hans has been described that way. Shannon Hale's YA works have
Yeah.
all been described that way. And all of those ladies are still publishing, but they've all had to make some really major, like, sort of genre shit because YA has become such a thing. But we'll save that for
next
very shortly.
Yeah, yeah.
Soon, dear listeners.
We'll circle back to that, but in a different episode.
That's a
So yeah,
foreshadow.
so I think middle grade is, again, it's bigger than people tend to give it credit for, but it's also, it's not just about middle school aged kids. Like, it really is like that upper elementary and all of middle school.
Maybe even into freshman year of high school, really.
Maybe even, yeah, because again, there are readers who are 9th grade who, like, again, they read solidly at a 9th grade level. Like, they've met
Right.
their match in the book, and so they're not ready yet for an 11th grade or 12th grade level book, or they're just kind of tired. Like, they're just like, I don't want to read anything difficult. I want to have fun or
Yeah,
something.
or like I
don't
was,
know.
I was always on the very youngest end of the grade, like just barely turning 14, like when freshman year started.
Mm-hmm.
So like, if you're on the older end, I could see being more ready for some of the YA books because you're already 15, you're getting up there.
Yeah.
But for some like the younger grade end of the spectrum, I could see just comfort. Like there are some very weird, like you don't feel it when you are that age, but like looking back, there are some very deep chasms between like 14 and 16 and 18.
Huge, and I don't feel it. I felt it immensely.
You don't always feel it.
I suppose it depends on the human you
Yes.
are. Adolescence was catastrophic. But anyway, middle grade. Does anyone have any questions?
What's your favorite?
Was my Oh, that's a horrible question. Was my favorite of all the middle grade books ever?
Yes.
I have to name one?
Top 3.
Listen, it's obviously
three?
Howl's Moving Castle. Stop asking. Just
I
kidding.
feel like Howl's Moving Castle is not a middle grade novel.
No, but they.
It
Wizard
is
of Earthsea?
solidly YA. Wizard of Earthsea is even a YA book.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean it was originally
even though
published
they
as a
put them
YA
in
book.
those sections, they're really not.
Yeah, because so Wizard of
there
Earthsea. Yeah.
Is there something about how the topics in those books are treated that makes you say they're YA? Because on some level, too, like
Good question.
Yeah.
middle grade fantasy hits
Yeah.
a lot of same beats as YA fantasy, at least like since that's kind of where we're landing
Yeah,
right
the
now.
language is too sophisticated in both of them.
Yeah, like there's language use was something I was thinking of. To throw Sarah J. Maas in there, even though she's like really technically new adult at this point. If you're 12 and you've just read Percy Jackson, I'm not handing you Throne of Glass.
Nope. Okay, let's talk
Or
about this.
maybe Throne of Glass,
wait,
but then
wait,
as
yeah.
the series
I
progresses.
do want to talk about this because there is an interesting thing that I was not that reader. But there are other kids who are definitely this kind of reader. There's a divide between the fantasy reader and the non-fantasy reader.
This is fair.
This
at
is
12.
true. This is very
Fantasy
true.
readers at 12 can handle a lot.
That's fair.
You're not wrong.
Because that's what they're used to. I mean, we're at 12 as a fantasy reader, you're an obsessive.
True.
Otherwise,
Yes.
you wouldn't be reading fantasy. And your books have been big for years because, well, it's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
When you have put dragons in your book, suddenly they just get
And also,
bigger.
when you're building a whole second world, you're allowed a little more page room to build that for people.
Yeah, so I think like it's one of those things where, or you sometimes like you find yourself reading older fantasy works like Narnia that have like a sophisticated, even if the language is not necessarily sophisticated in some of those, the structure is sophisticated, or the texture of the worlds that he's
Yeah.
building or the subjects that he's covering are sophisticated in a way that's approachable.
Yeah.
So that your brain is doing all kinds of things subconsciously that you're not even aware of, but you want something that complex. almost always to get you through high school. Readers of non-fantasy subjects like mysteries or historical fiction, which was a big deal for me in middle school.
Working your way into romances, maybe.
Yeah, it's not quite the same. It's not that it's less sophisticated. It's more that the book can't play around as much. Like, it has to give you a vibe. Like, it has to be a certain mood, and if it doesn't fit the mood, it could be a historical fiction. Like, you could say all day long to a kid who, like, loves historical fiction and wants to read more World War II books, here, you need to read
Codename Verity.
Codename Verity, because it's a solid World War II.
It's hitting all these boxes you're telling me you want ticked.
But if they read the first page and it's not giving them the vibe that historical fiction has for them for however long they've been reading it, suddenly they're like, that's not for me.
Shades of Grey, and they're like, oh no.
Yeah, like there's it's a weird textural thing in middle grade that like genres sort of start to become a little bit more important in middle grade for the first time, whereas in elementary school kids read anything. Like,
I read the car manual.
Yeah, I habitually read cereal boxes and shampoo bottles because I needed to read in the shower.
Yeah.
And I realized that carrying a book in the shower was not a good idea. So I would read shampoo bottles.
That's why I was reading the car manuals. We were stopped at the gas station. I had finished my book.
Yep.
Teen magazine, 17, growing up, 4 older sisters. It was.
Oh, I was gonna say,
I learned a lot growing up that I probably shouldn't have known at that point in my life.
See, at that point in my life, all my friends who were older than me had the otaku, like Shonen Jump, like magazines, the giant ones, and so I would literally just like steal it from them during the day and then hand it back to them at lunch, and they would know that I have done so because I would literally just grab it and go, hey, can I read this? And they're like, yeah, sure, bring it back at lunch. And I would just read the whole entire thing. It's like that, where Shonen Jump ones, like middle grade-y style, you don't exactly get that. There's like a lot of genre differences.
Yeah, right.
And there's a lot of, I would say, like, if you're like reading like your fantasy novels, there's a lot like more that you can dive into. There's a lot more maturity that's in there.
Oh yeah, yes.
You get that a lot with that style of stuff too. It's there.
Yeah, and also you are like, manga and anime fans tend to become them in middle school because that's where they just find themselves in that direction. It may not even be a reason.
Yep.
It might be your dad watches them, or it might be your older sibling watches them, or it might be you caught it one night when you weren't supposed to be up in 6th grade and wow,
Inuyasha's on.
Yeah, you're like, whatever this thing is doing, nothing's ever done this to me before. I want more. And so you become, there's a sense of maturity that you have in middle school when you're an anime manga fan, because not only are you engaging with something that is
a lot older than what you should be
usually
reading.
older, but also it's a completely different storytelling
world
perspective than you've ever had before. No movie that you've ever seen has done this to you before because Disney does not make movies like that, or no one in America makes movies like that. I mean, it's a whole completely different shift, and if you can handle that and you want more, you're going to be a little bit more sophisticated as a connoisseur of art. I just said that.
It's not even like that. It's more just like you get your like maturity and like your little fantasy, but like there's like a level up from that.
Yeah.
Especially because you're reading things that are like, for example, I'm gonna use one that's probably you shouldn't be reading as a middle grade reader. Like,
I mean,
around the age, but like Attack on Titan like style things.
Oh yeah, every middle schooler I know
what,
was like, Attack on Titan for like years.
Yeah, but when you actually like read it and you know what's like in there and what they're like portraying, and you're like, why are you reading? What?
Yeah.
Let them read it.
They're doing what? But then you're like, okay, fine, whatever. Go read your thing.
No, there is that very much that weird level of like, as much as we say like, oh man, it's weird, for me to think of a middle schooler reading Throne of Glass. A lot of the time when they don't understand something, it's not scarring them. They're just like, that's clearly something I'll learn more about one day, and then keep going.
They just move on.
Yeah. Or it's couched in a scene that's boring them to death, and they're just like, next, and they don't even know. They didn't even read that part. They're just like,
they skip like 5
Have you ever gone
pages
back
ahead.
to read a book that maybe a book as a younger reader that you read and you didn't fully grasp, and then you came back to it years later, you're like, oh wow. Like, it's like watching movies. Like, when you're a kid, you're watching these R-rated movies, and then you go back and watch it as an adult, like, oh, dear God, my parents should go to,
Well, I mean, yeah.
You say that like I was allowed to watch R-rated movies.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
That didn't happen. You had a question, I think.
I had a couple questions pop up here and there, but I can't remember what it was now.
Oh, boo.
You should
Actually,
have
no, we're
written them
talking about the
down.
complexities of middle grade a little bit, like and some of the variations of it. So why middle grade? I mean, why can't we just throw them primers and tell them to learn their letters? Let's talk about
Because
that.
Because we don't live in
kindergarten.
1912. I mean, we've kind of moved past that part as a society. And also, they're 12. Like,
Yeah, they're not 2.
yeah.
They're 1, 2.
I don't even know how to.
Yes.
I hate all of you. I don't even know how to engage with that question.
Tony, I'm now seceding with you. I'm done.
Okay.
Let's talk about
what
the
is the.
trajectory of
Yes.
middle grade. The history, the growth.
Do you think middle grade has gotten more or less complex over the years?
Much
More.
Much more. In the last 5 years alone, it has become incredibly complicated. Like the storytelling. I was actually just examining this recently because
Yeah.
I'm reading a nonfiction. I realized that I didn't understand anything about the history of children's literature except the history of fantasy in children's literature, and I was like, I'm missing a lot here. Oh no! So I checked out a whole bunch of books, and one of them is by the wonderful Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop, who.
Give us mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors.
Yes, I bow to the queen. Wonderful black female scholar from Ohio. We'll forgive her for the state that she lives and works in. Anyway, she wrote a book called Free Within Ourselves, which is a whole examination of like how African American writers, illustrators, and characters and stories entered into American children's literature and grew. And what's striking when you look at some of the first like novelists in that category, which are people like Walter Dean Myers and Virginia Hamilton, Mildred D. Taylor, all of whom were published in 68, 69, 1970 for the very first time. So it's like, wow, we got to the 60s before suddenly black children could be children? This is demented and says a lot about America. But anyway, my mother was born in 65, by the way, just to give you guys a little spin on what that must have felt like. Anyway, all of that is to say that if you read those early like texts, as sophisticated as they are on one level of like, they're obviously telling, they're obviously using language in a way that hasn't been used in American fiction before. They're obviously using like symbology and cultural touchstones and all of those things that, you know, if you're not a black child growing up, you wouldn't know anything about. Or if you are a black child, you wouldn't have read it in a book before. So it's mind-blowing simply for existing. That would cut no ice with middle schoolers today because it's too simple. The stories were only so long because they had to be simple. These days, you have to have like 4D chess going on by chapter 3, or your readers are like, I was bored.
Yeah. And if you don't sound like a real middle schooler, God help you.
Yeah, so there's this weird like advice thing going around just to crack this open, you know, the publishing end of things. It's really irritating me, and I'm starting to like lose my mind over it a little bit. People are like, yeah, some of the core differences between writing YA and middle grade, you know, most of YA is going to be in first person and most of middle grade is going to be in third person. And I'm like, what middle grade are you reading? Okay, if you're still reading the first, like even the first Percy Jackson novel was in first person.
Yeah.
Like, we've moved beyond the point where, like, most middle school books that I've read, or middle grade books that I've read that have been published in the last 2 years, have been in first person, present. So I'm like, what?
They seem a little out of touch then.
I think they're out of touch. But that's also the point, too, about this age group, is that the books have to become more sophisticated because the kids grow up that fast. Like, you get 3 years in middle school, done.
Yeah.
If you're the kind of fourth grader who was already reading, like, and wasn't censored, and I mean, there's all kinds of things around that. But like, if you're the kind of fourth grader who like got your whole 5 years of reading middle school books, more power to you. But you're done by 8th grade because you've kind of done that. You know, you want to read. We've
Until
all
you
met
get
those,
old and you're like, oh, this middle grade sounds good again.
Right, but we've all met those 10th graders, right? Or we may have gone to school with those 10th graders, or maybe I was not, but I knew some of those 10th graders who were like, Yeah, I've been reading my way through the collected works of Charles Dickens, the unabridged version, thank you, because I don't, and you see them carrying them around, and you're like, what, like, tankhead wants to read Charles Dickens in 10th grade? Like,
you're reading, like, Les Mis, and you're reading the Brick unabridged version.
Yeah, right, and it's just
Well, that's because you're a theater kid. That's a different story.
That is
But just read the abridged version. Don't read the unabridged
Moby Dick,
version.
then. Moby Dick.
yeah, right, like, I'm like, excuse me, you don't have to be pretentious just because you're in high school now.
I feel like any of us who actually legitimately read those books in high school or whenever, we read them, but we didn't want to be made fun of because I got enough heck from my sisters at home being made fun of for actually knowing how to read that hope one day y'all listen to this podcast. Y'all tortured me. I go to therapy because of you. But no, like
also known as working in a library.
Yeah. No, that's being the therapist.
right. But it's I feel like a lot of those people like the kids who legitimately read and even mildly understood a book like that, I kept it hidden. Like I didn't want people to like see me reading.
You were of a different generation.
Well, considerably.
Yeah. Well, at the time
Borderline
I was in high
boomer.
school,
You got some boomer qualities.
I met those. I mean, those kids irritated the crap out of me because they were like, if you want to read real books, you should try reading Tale of Two Cities. It's fabulous, darling. And I'm like, why are you speaking in a British accent? Just because you're reading Charles Dickens. Like, get out of my face. I read the second Aragon book 3 times this weekend. What did you do with your life?
Got through 2 more pages of A Tale of Two Cities.
And then you read it after they tell you, oh, you should read this, and you're like,
And these are the
Why?
same kids who can't grasp Hamlet. And I'm like, wow.
so
you
did
can't
you
grasp
actually
Hamlet. That's
read
hilarious.
the book?
Yeah, I'm like, you can read Dickens, but you can't read Hamlet. All right. Well, that's one thing. Anyway, don't get me started. I'm being.
So okay, like so a middle grader. Some of the stuff you shared in there, and I'm glad you shared the Walter Dean Myers article in the Working Doc, because we've had discussions about I think a similar interview he gave where he's like I saw myself,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I think that was a really 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 good article too.
Yeah.
And I think that's really what's happening right now in middle grade too, is like it's experiencing the boom that YA is still in the middle of, but started a couple of years ago. Like I feel like middle grades started more recently, at least in my like.
I think so.
You spend more time with it than I do, so
Yeah.
I'm willing to defer to you there. But
Yeah, there's been a huge yeah, there has been a boom, and I think it's only just now starting. Like the number of significant YA authors, or at least people who were significant in like 2013, 2014, or who had like budding careers in 2013, 2014, they were like authors to watch. All of them, if they want to maintain a career in the current like kid-lit landscape, all of them have started writing middle grade. And the ones who don't care, like they're just like, I want to write YA. YA is what I write. I don't have to make money at it. I'm going to work with my little editor over here who buys my works, and I'm going to do what I do because I refuse to like become
Branch out.
something that I'm not. You know what I mean? Like if you're not, okay, you know, and this is going to sound like an indictment. It's not really an indictment. It's just the truth. If you're not, you know, a queer, Black, Indigenous person of color, or it's some version of that, YA has a really difficult time pitching you to anyone. And you have to be someone who's just like already got a name, like Sandra Claire's never gonna not sell a book.
Yeah.
Or you have to be someone that has like a devoted readership that no matter what you publish ever for the rest of perpetuity, like they're just gonna like hook onto you. But there is a weird like not gulf. It's not bad. Again, it's not an indictment. It's just a reality, and that's fine. There are authors who are none of those things who are like, but I like writing YA, and I want to write YA, so I'm gonna keep doing that. And there are others who are like, crap. I need to make money because I'm 60 and my husband's retirement money is coming around and it's not coming around fast enough. How do I, like, and they switch to middle grade because their agent's like, I think you should switch to middle grade because there's a boom happening right now that's going to get bigger in the next few years.
So, on the topic of that, I know there are plenty of authors who, again, are switching partially because the tide started that way, but partially, you know, they have had the idea that actually works for them that
Yeah.
way. Have you come across anything you feel is more disingenuously middle grade?
Ooh.
That's a good question.
Because again, I see this more in like specifically like adult romances, especially like clean and wholesome ones, quote unquote, where somebody, you know, they're doing like it's single school teacher meets this cute little 12-year-old and look, her daddy's widowed. Like, this is going to be, you know where this is going.
Yes.
But then you talk to the 12-year-old, and I'm like, have you spoken to a 12-year-old ever?
In your entire life?
Ever. In the last 25 years.
I honestly feel like it would happen more if middle grade gatekeepers haven't been like hard to pass since E.B. White. Like they like middle grade editors are fierce. They're like, nah, because most of them have been doing it for, a decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. They have imprints with their names on them and that kind of thing. And so like they're not gonna let like crap fly. Not, which is to say that there are plenty of, bad children's books that are published all the time.
Yeah.
We know this. But on the level of like, is it something that a child can read, would desire to read? That's like bottom base level line number 1. And if the editor can sniff that this is something you're just trying to make money off of, 99% of the time those just don't pass.
Yeah.
Some books are just bad, like they're just poorly written, or they're like books that work for the kid that's that specific age. Like, I read the first Dogman book and was like, I don't need to read the rest of these because I know this is exactly how these are going to go. And this works because it's written for 10-year-olds. Like,
yes.
It's funny, it's cute, it's great, but I'm not the kind of, I'm 33. I'm not supposed to give this 5 stars.
Yeah. I don't need to read all 18 Dogman books.
Yeah, or there's those people, okay, speaking of which, there are people who do not understand that children's books are written for children.
Oh my god, yes.
And this happens in middle school books all the time. Like picture books, people get it because they're usually reading them with their kids.
Yeah.
Early chapter books, same thing. There's that transition. You're sort of helping your kid like learn how to read, and people pat themselves on the back for that kind of thing, even if they're not really doing a good job of it. But anyway, not gonna go there. Middle school books, because they're the first time that your kids like are actually taking ownership of their own reading, like
habits,
and
styles.
like they're developing what they want to read and how they want to read and what makes them comfortable and uncomfortable and so on and so forth. So you may not know at all what your kid is reading unless your kid is the kind of kid that shows up at the dinner table with a book and is like, this book is about grief or whatever. They're not going to say that.
Or
but,
you go to the library with your kid and your kid's like, hey, look at all these books I just got.
Yeah, or your mom asks you why you're sobbing on the couch because you're supposed to be doing your homework, and what you're actually doing is reading about Johnny Tremaine's hand tragedy as it is melting. Yeah, he was a cocky silversmith, and he got what he paid for it. That was the whole point of the... Anyway, that's not the point.
Anyways,
Yeah.
continuing
So
onwards.
all of that is to say that, like, one of the tricks, one of the most irritating things in Goodreads reviews from... Not from parents necessarily, sometimes parents, but from teachers and library professionals who work with children. They'll read the first Diary of a Wimpy Kid book got trashed on Goodreads by grown-ups who work with children because they're like, this book teaches foul things, stinky cheese, are you kidding me? And I'm like, have you met a middle schooler? Like,
That's literally all
that
they
is
care
so,
about.
like, middle schoolers talk smack all day because they can.
Sounds like they're so far removed from the...
They're so like distant. Like they're just they don't get it.
And I feel like it's like in the same vein, like those educators, and then similarly, an adult who writes a picture book cannot get it traditionally published. I'm sorry for how mean that sounds.
Nope.
This is a call out, isn't
And
it?
then emails librarians, bookstores directly going, hey, I wrote this book to cover this important issue children should know about. Like, children don't read issue books because they are issue books.
Yeah. Right.
They might read an issue book, such as The Good Kind of Trouble, to give it a very broad label of that.
Sure.
Because
Yeah.
it's interesting, because Shay is a good character
Yes.
who they can relate to.
Right.
And it just so happens she's facing Black Lives Matter and all of that kind of thing
Yeah.
at the same time. But they
Yeah.
are not reading it because it is a Black Lives Matter book.
No, they might even just only read it. Like there are some kids who are, I mean, especially these days, there's a kid that she's a black girl reader, she sees a black girl on the cover and she's like, ooh, must read. And might come back and go, it was boring, which is fine.
Yeah.
But like that's the initial draw, but you have to be good to keep the reader engaged because they're 12 and they talk crap all day. So
and they can smell the BS in the book a mile away. Like,
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
They open it, they read the first page, and they go, yeah, no, this is trash. We don't want it.
There's a great clip from an old, it was like between Goblet of Fire and Order of the Phoenix Publishing, and I think the first Harry Potter movie was coming out. So it was like just this whole big like, look at the Harry Potter phenomenon.
So this is like 2000.
Yeah, 2000, right? Yeah. So yeah, there's this whole like segment where they're showing off different bookstores and different readers and so on. This one kid, little girl, grabs her signed copy of Goblet of Fire. So she's standing across from J.K. Rowling, flips open the book and goes, "Oh man, this is not how it's supposed to start," and storms off camera.
Oh my god.
I was like, yes!
Queen.
That is exactly how middle school, I mean, that's just how they are. Not even just how they read. That's just how they function in
Well,
life.
to be fair, it deviated from the formula of the first 3 Harry Potter.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's, middle school readers in a nutshell don't have time for your...
Yeah, be honest with them. Again, couch it in language that is appropriate for them, that makes sense for them, both developmentally and emotionally. I really need a Kleenex. But, like, they can smell if you're faking them out.
It's true.
And they know instantly if they're going to be, like, even from like the back cover, they know if they're going to be taught something or if they're being given a good story.
And, it's always funny, like, so there are a couple of books that I read when I was in that age group that I would never have read, even the one that was assigned for homework, because I was just like, I can fake it. Like, I don't have to read this book to get a good grade in this class. And my teacher knew that about me, smartly. So, he says, "I want you to read this book. I think you'd really like it." I didn't know that literally later that day he was like, "I'm assigning you the 8th grade to read this book because I think it's important, blah, blah, blah." No, he just said, "I think you'd really like it." So I take my copy home and I do all of my homework first and then I start reading it. And 4 chapters later, Johnny Tremaine is losing his hand, and it was just like I had never cried on a book before. I had read all of the Chronicles of Narnia books like 15 times by this point, and I'd never cried, like never shed a single tear. But that chapter in Johnny, I was bawling. It's pretty graphic, but I was also I was losing my stuff. And the other book was Tom Sawyer. I don't know why I read Tom Sawyer in 5th, 6th grade, but I just did. Like, I just started it. And
sure.
And the weird description of, like, Tom whitewashing the fence did it for me. Like, I was like, oh, this guy gets kids. And my teacher looks at me and goes, "Oh, yeah, you might find Mark Twain interesting." And then I read The Interval, which is the worst short story ever written. And I was like, this is trash. And he's like, "You might change your mind about Mark Twain eventually." And he was both right and wrong. I think Mark Twain's a genius. I also think he's a fool. But
Not everything's a winner.
No, his essays are winners. That short story, nope.
See, my teacher did that to me with Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None. I wasn't wanting to read it. I didn't want to read it.
Yeah.
She was going to assign it to us, and it was part of our class where we got to read whatever we wanted and then come back and, like, it was basically book club, but an actual class.
Whatever works.
Like, I don't understand why you just wrote book reports on whatever book you were reading.
Book reports.
But she assigned that as the one specific book that we had to actually sit down and read in class. And so she hands it to me first. And then she was like, "Read this book." And I was like, "Okay, fine, whatever." So I get like halfway through, and then she like announces that she's doing it. And I'm already halfway through, and I'm just going, like, basically hitting the spine of the book on the table at this point, because, like, I like the suspense aspect of things, but I've read one too many Nancy Drews and played one too many Nancy Drew video games on my computer at home. So I know exactly where this book is going at this point.
Except you haven't encountered Agatha yet.
So I'm hitting the book on the table, and she's like, "How's it going for you?" And I'm like, "I hate this book right now." I did the same thing when my teacher gave us Lord of the Flies, and with, like, other ones too. Except with Lord of the Flies, one of my classmates actually spoiled the whole, like, one of
the core deaths.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The core death of the whole entire book. Spoils it for me on the first day they assigned the book to us. I looked at him and I said, "Sure, okay." Went home, read it the whole entire, like, weekend. and then came back into class after having read it and watched both movies because there's 2 different versions of the movie because I was just my brain.
Yes.
I'm me.
I see that.
And
yes.
once the hyperfixation was there, I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I came back and I looked at him in class and I said, I hate you. Thanks for telling me the spoiler of the story. And I couldn't sit there in class the whole entire time because I had already finished the book and we were like reading the audiobook version.
no!
And the audiobook version is detrimentally boring because the guy has like the droning, like monotoned the whole entire
I think it's
time for
read
the
by the
story.
author, actually.
Well, some people don't know how to read their own work.
Cassandra Clare. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I do.
And so like I sat in class and I was just like, I don't know what to do now. I don't know how this works now.
You know, you were talking mystery, and I wanted to throw a book at you because I read it 2 years ago. It was during lockdown. Erin pulled it out. It's one of her favorite books.
Yeah.
Am I gonna have to?
Yeah, it's
pull
not
this
going to go out the window.
upstairs?
Westingame.
Oh,
Ellie
that's
Raskin.
That's a classic.
Like,
yeah.
it's one of her favorite books. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, whatever. Like, mystery's not my thing anyway, so, like,
But the Westingame is everyone's.
Is that
But-
the one where it jumps perspective from character to character? Or
I
is-
think it does.
It
I think there's
does.
some there's the millionaire dies and leaves clues for everyone in the one apartment building that he
I
owned.
think I remember reading
The
that.
main character is Turtle.
Okay.
Of course it is.
Like I think it's Tabitha, but she doesn't like Tabitha because it's the '80s, so she's Turtle.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, I get it, but like that's.
And
okay.
it's such a good-
I've heard that's a classic. I mean,
you
Yeah,
should
no, it's a
definitely give it a
very
go.
fun-
okay. I've been meaning to for years.
Why
I
do
just
we
haven't.
not
Take your
own-
time. You know,
Yeah.
don't force it on
The
you.
Westingame?
Well, that one and
Do we
like
not own
Frankel
this
E.
book?
Basilweiler,
Oh, we
I've
do?
also been
No.
meaning to get to, and I haven't because
Like I was
No, it's lost.
We don't own a copy
Toni!
of the Westingame, Tony.
Let's solve the
Fix this so I can read it.
I got you.
Thank you.
it's pretty
You
good.
throw this at me and I can't read it.
I mean, you
Well, check,
literally could. No.
I
Check,
could.
Hoopla or.
That's what I was gonna do.
Okay.
Here.
Well, we're all
I have to
was
write
gonna
a
kinda
3-page paper first.
This just came to me. Is there somewhere we want to see middle grade go in this great boom era that we are living in?
Oh God, you asked that.
I want to see
Very interesting.
middle grade dystopian and post-apocalyptic. Take
So you want The Giver again?
Yeah.
yes.
Well, it just won the Newbery. It's called The Last Quintista. Read it.
Actually,
what?
I haven't read it, but Kathy.
When
loved it.
Kathy was talking about it the other day, I'm like, I really want to check this out.
Yeah. So oh gosh. Okay. You know what you're
I
doing.
know what buttons to hit.
It's fine. Okay. So not another rant. It's not really a rant. So as we are slowly progressing forward, and
This looks like a nicer version of
You know.
Knives Out.
we have Kyle Lukoff writing wonderful Newbery honor-winning books. Book. We've got.
It will be books.
Yes, right. We've got Alex Gino continuing to break bread or something. Break
Barriers?
Break open thank you, that's it. Break barriers, glass ceilings, so on, all of that. The one area in which all of children's lit, not just middle grade, but I think in middle grade it could have a really special impact if we set them loose. Queer kids of color have no spaces. I can literally list maybe 10 books. And none of them are trans. Not a single one of them. So that's one thing that middle grade has to reckon with is okay, why are there no queer there's a lesbian black girl. There is
Well, you're thinking. I feel like in general, while we have broken a lot of sort of quote unquote diversity barriers or whatever you wish to refer to them as,
Right.
I feel like not a lot of intersectionality has necessarily been happening. There's a lot of gay books and there's a lot of books of color and there are some disabled books and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's not a book where there is a gay disabled black character. Or something
Hello,
like that.
as the central character. It's one thing to have
And
it.
where all of those get to have an equal share of the aspect too.
Yes.
There might
Yes.
be a gay book where a character happens to be Latinx, or there might be an Asian American book where another character happens to be a lesbian or something like that.
Yes. But to have the central characters still need. I mean, we're getting some really interesting, sophisticated black girls written by black women. I mean, who have it's incredibly wide-ranging in a way that it never was, or never might have been. However, none of those black girls is trans. Only one of those black girls is a lesbian. I mean, like, and there seems to be this, I don't know if it's caution on the hands of, cis black authors who are just like, I'm not even gonna, because if I mess it up, the Rainbow Mafia gonna kill me. Not today. But I think they also understand what it feels like to be black, a reader, a writer, an intelligent person, and to not be published, even though plenty of white authors are publishing works about black communities and black children and not doing a good job. And yet
I wonder why.
An intelligent, creative person are being told, no, we already have our black book for the year. And it's like, yes, but it was written by Ellen. Or Sue. Or like, sorry for all the black ladies named Ellen and Sue, but you know what I'm talking about. Or, Robin or Jake.
Sue Ellen.
Or Sue Ellen. Sorry, Sue Ellen. But like, seriously, I think that's why there's a hesitation from cis black authors to cross into that
and
arena.
I do also think, I don't know how much of this from the publishing end, but I do also think sometimes you hear, because, the internet can't ever enjoy anything, somebody will say, well, my main character is a wheelchair-bound Iranian bisexual girl. And somebody's like, no, but he's all of those things at once. And then the author has to be like, I am literally all of those things at once.
Which is, don't get me started, don't get me started.
Let's get it started.
Or even just things like, I remember Jason Reynolds saying this in an, there's a YouTube video of an event that he did with Daniel Jose Older. And it was Jason Reynolds' first series of middle grade stories, and he was saying, it's hilarious to me because people kept asking me, why do you want to write a track book? And he was like, because I do not want to write a basketball book. Black kids do more sports than basketball. And he ran over his whole career. He's like, that's why this kid did ROTC in my other book. This is why this kid did this other sport in my book, because I refuse to write a kid playing basketball, because guess what we've seen from black kids? Basketball. Done. Tired. And for me, it's I want to see a black boy who doesn't do sports or any physical activity whatsoever, because that's real and a thing, and no one believes it.
Jake Livingston.
Well, yeah, but Ryan's a nerd. There's a reason for that. Or
also, Jake's got too much going on to do any sports. That kid.
Listen.
He's got a lot happening in his life.
Listen. Yeah, so much. But it's one of those things where it's finding a lane for kids to do things that we know that they do, but because in the popular narrative, queer kids experience life in this way. I had somebody say to me last night, beautifully, I've literally never had a person say this to me before, but he looked at me and he goes, I am so sorry. I have realized that for the last few hours I've made huge assumptions about what your life must have been simply because you're a black trans woman, and I just want to apologize for that, because I should never have assumed those things. And I was just like, no one's ever astute enough to observe something like that.
Shout
about
out to
me.
that person.
I'm gonna go pass out in the middle of your floor now. It's fine. It was bizarre, and yet true. That we make assumptions all the time about characters.
Yes.
I might read a book and go, no white girl at 12 ever thought these things.
And then you're going to listen to one of my stories from being 12.
Yeah, and I'm going to go, oh, all right, never mind. Harriet did spy. I see.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yes, by the way, Subterfuge queer classic for anyone who didn't know that.
Yep.
Yeah. So.
Like Frog and Toad.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone read Frog and Toad and didn't see that one, but
Okay, so circling it back, since we are, not quite
running
close.
out of time.
But again, maybe not a top favorite, but a favorite middle grade from everyone. Just something that they have read and enjoyed. Aaron,
Jackson of the Percys.
All of the Percy Jacksons. Admittedly.
Jackson of the Percys.
Yeah, those are fantastic.
I just read his new one, Daughter of the Deep, and I need everyone to love that as much as they love
I like
Percy Jackson,
all his
'cause
different
it's
little
so
imprints.
good, you guys.
Nice.
I like
it's
all
so
his,
good.
yeah.
Okay.
I like all his little like
I have that
imprints,
one.
like the other authors within his like.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the-
that he's been like.
Rick Riordan Presents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I love all of those, like just because of the way that they're written and the way that they go, and
Yeah, like Rick understood the secret sauce. For
Yep.
that
writing
like
that
comes
great.
to me at me,
Yeah.
and it like warms my little 12-year-old fantasy reader soul.
They're,
Before I started getting into the anime manga scene, like it warms my soul.
Yeah.
So
His
therefore,
new
I'm
one's-
happy.
His new one's more sci-fi, I would say.
Ooh.
Like,
Oh,
North of the
sure.
Bridge.
So I'm
Yes.
down for this one.
Yeah.
It's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but sideways.
Not. Yeah, but sideways.
I
Yes,
love
exactly.
that.
Yes.
Okay. Anyways, next.
I've always been partial to The Giver.
I
Nothing wrong with that.
love The Giver. Would not have loved it in middle school because I read it my senior year of high school.
Would you
but I-
consider it a middle?
Oh,
grade
absolutely.
book?
Swear, I think it's solidly a middle grade book, especially because it gets read so often in 5th and 6th grade. But I don't think it has an impact on most readers until they're older.
Confession: I've never actually read it before.
I never have either, actually.
There's a good graphic novel.
Really?
Section 2.
I read Gathering Blue once, but I never read.
Oh.
My lowest Lowry, because of who I am as a person, was Number the Stars.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yeah, I could. Okay.
Have you read all 4?
No, I've only read the original. And back to the topic of book reports. I remember doing a book report for it.
I did too.
I always love doing book reports.
I hate
myself.
book reports. I always hated them. Sorry. I feel like I always just like. It's like I love something and I hate it.
Okay.
We just, you guys have different tastes, and we respect that.
Yeah, we're both weird on different frequencies. Sorry.
Can I reinsert Tuck Everlasting in there? Because I
Oh,
like
Tuck
it.
Ooh,
Everlasting.
I need to read that one because.
You want to cry? Tuck Everlasting.
Freak
Okay,
the Mighty.
Yes.
Sure.
What was that?
Freak the Mighty.
Oh, I
That's
read that.
another sad
Again,
one.
wow.
yeah.
The Devil's Arithmetic.
All right. Let me not choose a sad middle grade book.
Apparently, we all wanted to suffer it.
I mean, yeah,
Terrible.
because I've already. Oh my God! Stop! I've already chosen or said Johnny Tremaine because that was the first book that made
Can
me
I
cry.
throw? Oh my God, Madeline L'Engle.
Wrinkle in Time.
Wrinkle in Time?
Yeah,
Yes.
and I need.
Wrinkle in
Okay,
Time.
yeah, these are all old like classics
Which-
that I need to.
At
That
least
dates
for me.
all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're fantastic, but
Because it's what I've tried to keep up with middle grade, but I have to keep up with young adult and adult enough that like it's not happening for me.
yeah, I would say recent. I'm still just sort of like diving
Recent.
in, but I would actually say like King and the Dragonflies is so slept on. It is beautiful, and I think it's the kind of book that can be read at multiple ages throughout your life and will make you cry for completely different reasons no matter the kind of human that you end up becoming. Because it is ostensibly about grief, but what it really is about is a child like finding out that maybe the world around him doesn't have space for him yet, and that his dead brother knew that before he did, and the one person, his dead brother, he wants to talk to it about the most as he figures himself out, is no longer here. Which, again, sad middle grade. Sorry, guys. Not sorry, guys. That's a.
I think there's something about middle grade too that like you're kind of emotionally aware enough for the first time for a good heartstring tugger like that. Like you're developing deeper feelings, deeper understandings of the world. You are confused about things like why your brother would die,
Yeah.
or what the Holocaust was about, or anything like that.
Yes.
Like you are grappling with a lot of new things that you've just developed the brain capacity for.
And middle grade authors love to just punch you in the heart because you're a middle schooler, then you can take it.
Yeah.
A more recent one, Anna and the Swallow Man
Yeah, you were mentioning that one.
by
to me. Yeah.
Gabriel Sabat.
Yeah, I remember.
Narrated expertly by Alan Gorduner.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
that tackles a World War II dynamic.
Oh yeah. Well, which
And-
is big for middle schoolers. I mean, just they
A
study.
bit of magical realism as well. But
Oh, cool.
The mysterious disappearance of Aiden S is my favorite. Like,
Oh yeah,
current
you were
one.
telling me recent. Yeah, I need to read that one. You can.
I didn't ask for permission to leave, so
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh.
do we want to
Smack?
wrap this up?
Yeah.
I don't have one.
Well, we could do Wilbur the pig.
no, we can't.
I would
Absolutely not. We're not.
I would
No,
kill
we
Wilbur
can't.
the pig because I want to eat the bacon.
You cannot kill Wilbur. That is
What?
not allowed.
Why?
That's the whole point of the story. Oh my god.
Okay, I'll get the other one. What was it, Chief? What was the pig that actually won?
I don't remember.
Percy, Annabeth, Grover, go. If we're going middle grade style. I want you to suffer.
Jen, I can't.
Wait a minute.
I can't answer this. You have to do it. I can't.
Okay.
I can't do it. My brain just died.
I don't like saying this, and the whole internet's gonna kill me for it.
No!
Uh-oh.
Don't you dare!
But
Bye-bye,
only,
Percy.
Who are we killing?
no, but only because I have latched on to both Percy and Annabeth with my whole heart. It's
Oh,
gotta be Grover
okay,
who's
never mind.
out. And I realize this because I love Grover. Like nothing against
are
Grover.
we killing Grover?
Yes, but
Okay.
I don't love Grover as much as I love Percy and Annabeth.
And is the other two just like
Okay,
a toss-up in
that
between?
way I agree with you. That's
Yeah.
what. But I was still like, I can't kill. Killing Grover's like killing Hagrid. Like, that's
It's
just
just-
you
mean.
can't do
it's
that.
Not,
Like,
it's not
why would
correct.
you do
It's not a
that?
good thing to do.
Refresh my mind a little bit. Annabeth, was that Zeus's?
No,
that's
Talia.
Athena's.
Annabeth is Athena's daughter.
And Percy's main squeeze.
Yeah.
I need to reread the series.
Yes, you do.
Like, I read it in like a couple days. Like, I just found it. Boom.
Everyone needs to finish the whole, like, 3-book series with me because, or, you know what I mean, like the
Yeah.
3 separate trilogies. They're
The saga.
The saga.
I think your preference of Percy or Annabeth depends on how you feel that day.
That is very true.
What about from the movie version?
No, I
I
can't
love those movies too. They were so
I can't.
great.
I can't.
Wait, what are we talking about?
Fired. But the
movie
TV
versions.
show.
Oh, when is that out? Oh,
They're starting. They have not even announced.
They haven't
casting
even
yet.
announced anyone yet.
It's just greenlit that it is actually happening.
okay.
You guys listen to musical?
Yes.
No, but I heard it's really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it?